Kate, welcome to Halloween Daily. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here. So, yeah. Hello, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Yeah, it's like starting to get kind of summery in Ireland finally. So it's like not freezing for once, for the like first time in months and months. So feeling good. It's putting me in a good mood. So that's good.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yes.
Good to hear it. Excellent. Excellent. Well, I'm very excited to talk to you. I love the film You Are Not My Mother. It's one of our favorites of the year so far, and of course it's a Halloween movie, so
Yes.
that's a bonus always. So I'm excited to talk to you about that and get some behind the scenes stories about the origins of that film.
Yeah.
But before we even talk about the film, I always, because we are Halloween Daily News, so I always like to
Yes.
try to start these interviews with a little bit about the holiday itself and what Halloween means to you. And obviously, growing up in Ireland, I mean that's where all this started, right? I mean, I'm excited to hear your relationship to the holiday, and I mean, I guess, did you celebrate Halloween? I think I know the answer, but did you celebrate Halloween always growing up?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, as you said, Ireland is, you know, kind of, I would say, the birthplace of Halloween in many ways. So it's a big holiday here. Yeah, we celebrate a lot. And as kids, like, you know, you obviously do the trick or treating and stuff, but then there's also a lot of more like harking back to the pagan times kind of rituals that you do. Like the kind of bonfires you light in the estates, which are technically illegal, but everyone does it anyway. And then there's a lot of fireworks. So like the fireworks will kind of start from the 1st of October and you'll hear them like, and then like on Halloween night, it's like almost like a war zone. It's just like constant fireworks, like just going off all night. And yeah, so it's a big, like everyone gets involved. Everyone's kind of, you know, celebrating. We get a bank holiday around Halloween as well. So it's like one of the Monday, whichever, it depends on where it falls, but you get a Monday off. So it's still like a big part of the culture. Yeah, definitely. And I just loved it as a kid. Like it's my favorite holiday of the year. Like even more than Christmas, I would be like counting down the days to Halloween. And I still sometimes do that as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's us. I mean, you know, every day is Halloween, and that day especially. So you were always into it as a kid. Did you always know? I mean, is it just was it just part of your knowledge growing up that your culture and that country is so connected to the holiday itself?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like, you know, we're very close to our pagan roots here. Like even though it's quite a Catholic country, it's like there's still a lot of the pagan superstitions and, you know, yeah, even like the kind of, there would be certain foods my grandmother would make on Halloween night, like culcanon, which had like, it was like kind of mashed potato with like kale in it, which is like not very Halloweeny, but that I always connected to Halloween. And like, yeah, so, you know, even my grandmother, so she was kind of like the older generation, so she wasn't as much into the kind of you know, trick-or-treating Americanized like kind of side of Halloween, but she still loved it and thought it was like, you know, she kind of really got involved and she had her own rituals and traditions that were part of it too. So yeah, I think all the generations down, like, and still to this day now, it's gotten like the American kind of rituals have crept in more in Ireland. So like last year, I think maybe after COVID, people wanted a big Halloween so much that like loads of, more so than I'd ever seen before, people had all the kind of like animatronic like pumpkins in their gardens and stuff, which like in Ireland you wouldn't normally see because you can't really buy that stuff here. But people had like big ghosts and skeletons and stuff, and I was like, this is great. I'm loving it. So yeah, it's getting I think it's even getting bigger in a way, in a different way maybe, but yeah, it's always a great time of year here, definitely.
That's wild to hear that there's more animatronics than ever just here recently. And I was curious about that. You spoke about some of the differences, different traditions, and where they do cross. And I was curious about that too. If you know, if you just sometimes look at like you said, the Americanized Halloween and just look at American and shake your head sometimes, like what are they thinking, or not? Is it what's your impression of that?
I mean, I love the kind of American side of the holiday. I think, you know, the bigger like animatronic skeletons in your garden, the better. I'm all for that. I was in so the film it premiered at TIFF in Toronto in September. So You Are Not My Mother was in the Midnight Madness program there. So it was like kind of towards the end of September. So the Spirit Halloween was open in Toronto. And I had heard all about like Spirit Halloween. I'd never been in one before. And like in Ireland, we don't really have dedicated Halloween stores. They're like more like, you know, a hardware store will have a part of it that sells some Halloween stuff, but it's like not, you don't get the kind of really big stuff. So I was like determined to go to the Spirit Halloween, and I was like just so delighted, just like running around it. I was just like, oh my God, I want to bring everything back. And like, but obviously couldn't fit like, you know, a giant witch in my suitcase and stuff like that. So I had to just like pick smaller things. But yeah, it was just a blast. And it was just, I love all that. I think it's so fun, and just like, why not? You know, it's like go all out. Just like, have a lot of fun with it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, like you said, last year, especially, it seems like after everything that's been going on with COVID and everything, everybody did seem to want to really embrace the holiday more than ever. And we kind of saw it over here as well. It seemed like just bigger than ever. And I'm seeing signs of it now this year that it's going to be even more so, it seems like.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm like, I feel like everyone starts to kind of like try and one up each other as well. Like we had so we bought these like we bought some like these kind of straw pumpkin men that were like we hung in our windows. And then our next door neighbor, who is kind of also these young people kind of living next door, they were like, oh, we were like inspired by your decorations. So they like bought all these gravestones and they were putting them into their garden. So we were like, yeah, we're starting a trend now. This is cool. Like, yeah, it's good. So I'm like, yeah, the more the better. Let's just keep amping it up all the time. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I love that. And yeah, starting the trend in the neighborhood. Yeah, it'll be growing, you know, and yeah, in a few years, that'll be the destination, the trick-or-treat neighborhood to hit, the street.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's so true. Yeah, I love that idea. Awesome.
And we always have to ask on Halloween, your favorite Halloween candy and your favorite Halloween costume that you've worn.
Favorite Halloween costume. So the candy is probably kind of different here in Ireland. I was always a kind of a fan of like pixie sticks. So they like, you know, they're just like basically flavored sugar in a tube. So I think that was like my favorite. And me and my girlfriend took my little cousin's trick-or-treating in Halloween that's just gone. And that was a real eye-opener. I was like, oh, okay, you get a lot of candy nowadays compared to like when I was a kid. So they like had a huge bag, they like emptied out on the floor. So we were like robbing some of their stuff. So there's like a lot of new candy now that I'd never heard of. And I was like, oh, I like it. So yeah, there's like a lot of different stuff. But yeah, I think costume, I don't know. I'm a real like, I love to go all out for Halloween costumes. Like I used to, when I had more time, I used to make a lot of my own stuff. I made do you know like Donnie Darko, the movie?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I made a Frank costume. So I made my own mask, and I found this like kind of onesie that was like brown fur, and I have it up in the attic. But one of the ears broke. But I think that was like my favorite because I was like in college and I didn't like have a job at the time. So I think I was just like had so much time on my hands. I was like, I'll make this mask for like 2 months before Halloween. So I was like, I think that's got to be it. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. I don't know if I'll top it again, but I'll try. I'll try.
You gotta aim high. But that does sound like an awesome one.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. What's your best Halloween costume you ever had?
Oh man, best ever. I don't know. I mean, I've got fond memories of stuff like Dracula and stuff as a kid, but these days my go-to is always Michael Myers, just stalking the edge of people's driveways as my son's trick-or-treating and stuff. I'll just be Michael Myers, just kind of stalking around the streets, and that's kind of my my Christmas morning is Halloween night for sure.
like that. That's really cool. That's awesome. A classic, you know, you can't beat a classic.
Yeah, I mean, it never gets tiring for me, and it's never not scary. There's always new kids that have never seen that mask, and it's just always freaky to them. It seems like.
Love that. That's great. There was that. I remember when I think I was like 8 or 9 maybe, and my poor mom, she was always like so freaked out by me, I think, because she's not really into horror movies that much or anything. But I asked, she was like, what do you want to be for Halloween? She was like organizing my costume. And I was like, I want to be a serial killer. And she was like, what? So she was like, she got me this like freaky mask and like a beanie and like this, I had this camo jacket that I used to obsessively wear when I was a kid. And she got me this knife, and like the pictures of me are just so weird from that Halloween because I'm just like standing with my knife trick or treating, and she's like, "What kind of a child do I have? What is this?" So that was also a good one. That was a good one.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Oh man. So it sounds like you've been enjoying Halloween throughout the years, just like we have. So.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So naturally you're gonna eventually make a Halloween movie, and it just all fits. So leading into that, let's talk a little bit. When did you start getting into filmmaking? When did you kind of know that was something you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, I think I've like always, it was always something that I just was really interested in, like films. And I kind of, you know, as a kid, I lived with my grandmother and my mother, and they were both very into, they were like kind of cinephiles. My grandmother was like big into kind of the old classic Hollywood movies, and like I watched, you know, classic Universal monster movies with her, and Psycho, and like all those kind of classics. So I think that kind of set me up that I had a really good knowledge of film really young. But then I then started getting like Empire magazine, which is a magazine in the UK, which is like a film magazine. And so I just kind of never let the idea go, and it just kind of festered within until I was like old enough to be going to college. And then there's one kind of big film school in Ireland. Well, when I was going, there was kind of one major one. So I just was like, I'm going there, I'm gonna do film and stick with it. And my poor mom was like, please do a real degree somewhere else. And I was like, nope, this is what's happening. So she was very supportive of it in the end. But it was just something I wouldn't let go. It was just like ever since I was a kid, I kind of just was obsessed with the idea of movies and making movies and, you know, watching them obsessively. So I think it just was something that was never going to go away, unfortunately.
And have you always been a fan of scary movies? Is that because I did see your short film, I guess it was your second short film, Cat Calls.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the spooky vibe as well. And I like that one a lot as well. So
yeah,
have you always kind of been a horror fan?
Yeah, definitely. I was talking to people about this because I was trying to work out like what were the first scary movies I watched recently. And I think my like gateway was probably Goosebumps books because they had them in my school library. So I started reading them because I was obsessed obviously with Halloween and anything scary or spooky. So then it was like, oh my God, there's a range of books which are just scary stories. That's like very appealing to me. So then I started reading them, which was kind of like my gateway in. And then when I got a little bit older, like as I said, I'd kind of seen some movies that were like in the realm of kind of spooky with my grandmother and my mom, but very tame. But then I think by the time I was like 8, 9, 10, I was starting to watch things like, The Sixth Sense and Blair Witch Project and like, then those kind of slashers like Urban Legend and like The Ring and stuff like that. So it's just like started to kind of gather. And then as I got a little bit older, kind of like preteen and teen, then it was just like I wanted to catch up on all the movies, like scary movies from the 70s that I hadn't really seen. So like, The Exorcist and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, stuff like that. So I was kind of like giving myself a horror movie education as I got old enough for like the more scarier stuff. So yeah, it was just like it was always something that I was like always trying to find something that would scare me more. And now unfortunately I've kind of like spent my ability to be scared, I think, because I like gave myself such a kind of like, you know, tough education of like watching lots of horror movies kind of between the ages of like 9 and like 16. So now I'm like, I find it very hard to kind of find things that will scare me. But no, yeah, it's always been a big thing that I've always been really interested in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So so as a horror fan and just kind of having this obsession with both Halloween and filmmaking, of course it's going to lead to You Are Not My Mother. But what's kind of the origin of this story? I mean, you wrote, you're writer and director, you know, and I love that. I feel like that's the filmmaker, you know, the true filmmaker. And I love talking to filmmakers that have done that, that have made a feature where, you know, it's their vision through. And so obviously challenges and rewards there and in both respects. But can you talk a little bit about the origin of this story and how it started to take shape?
Yeah, definitely. So I, you know, obviously was quite interested in Irish folklore, and you know, I think as kids in Ireland, you are, you know, given a good education of like our folklore and mythology, like in school, even like we cover a lot of our kind of folk tales and mythology. And so I, you know, you're kind of given a taste of it as a kid. But the funny thing is like you're always told the stories as if they're real. So it's always like, this is like a banshee is a real thing. And like, you know, and you will talk to people like even, you know, my mother's generation would somewhat believe that that was true. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of funny. It's like they're folk tales, but you're always afraid to like not believe them just in case. So that's kind of the attitude in Ireland. It's like everyone's like, oh yeah, sure, that's not real, but then but we won't fully say that just in case it is a bit real. So I always was really intrigued by that. So the folklore elements of You're Not My Mother kind of were the first building blocks, and particularly the changeling mythology I found really interesting, which is that fairies will swap your baby with one of their own and they'll take your baby to their world. And a lot of people in Irish history believed that was true. So it was kind of like a lot of family members met tragic ends because, you know, they were believed to be something else. So their families would, you know, treat them very badly, or in worst case scenarios, like they would die or be murdered. Particularly there's like a story that I found really interesting, was about a woman called Bridget Cleary, who her husband murdered her by fire in their house, because fire is seen to like get rid of a changeling. And then he was arrested, but he was like, no, I believed she was a changeling. And they even had a fairy doctor, which is like kind of a herbalist, almost like a witch, come to the house to like diagnose her in the weeks preceding that. But that was in 1895. So it's not like hundreds of years ago, really. It's like, you know, not that far in the past. So that was kind of one of the last known cases of like changelings in Ireland. But so all those stories were just really interesting to me. So I kind of started formulating an idea around changeling mythology, but then also I was really interested in just the idea of like when bad things happen in the past in a family, how they kind of could come back on the younger generation. And, you know, the older generation sometimes thinks they're doing a favor by keeping things secret and hidden, but actually that ends up making everything worse for the kind of generation coming of age. So the two ideas seemed to work really well. So it just kind of went from there. And then while I was writing, I was reading a lot about kind of pagan history and witchcraft in Ireland and all these kind of things. And, you know, the idea of Samhain, which is like the original Halloween holiday in paganism, is like, you know, it was the whole idea was that it was like kind of this night that the dead could come back, or these like things could cross into our world that they shouldn't be there. And the time around Samhain was thought to be quite, you know, supernatural in that way. So it just felt like the film should be set at Halloween in Ireland. And I felt like I hadn't seen Halloween depicted in an Irish Halloween in a film before. So I was like, well, it's my first feature film, so I can make it be a Halloween movie if I want to. So I'm going to do that. Yeah, so it all kind of started to come together, and yeah, it was all those kind of elements coming into it. So there's a lot of nods to like even small nods to certain kind of pagan things and Irish folklore characters that are kind of hidden within the film as well. So it's it's very steeped in that kind of Irish history.
Yeah, and you can definitely feel that, and you know, even watching it as an American, and but I think you're right. I couldn't think of another Halloween movie, you know, set on and around Halloween in Ireland, that I can think of really, and that got me really excited as I'm watching it, and this is kind of original, and it's this kind of, you know, subtle but constant presence that it is Halloween week, and it is kind of this, you know, subconscious countdown to Halloween night, and you know, there's the school plot with the party or the bonfire coming up, and you kind of hear that, and all that kind of keeps the clock ticking as Halloween. And like you said, that is the time when you know, the dead, you know, supposedly can come out and play, and so I think it definitely is a fitting way to wrap all that in, and refreshing for me to see, because I've always been fascinated with the origins of Halloween and Samhain, like you said, and just always curious and watching all the documentaries and reading whatever I can about it. And so to see a little bit of that reflected, but yet still, you know, in a modern lens and set today, and I liked the you know, the fireworks and everything, like you said, because that is different than what we see here. And to hear you describe it, you know, just lighting up the sky on October 31st, you know, it is a different vibe, but it was very cool to see that depicted in there. So were you always, was it always going to be a feature film?
Yeah, it was interesting actually, because I was working on kind of a few ideas for feature films, and then basically how the film came together was that I don't know how familiar you are, but in Ireland we have a government funded body called Screen Ireland. So they get money from the government, which then that they use to fund film here, which is you know, great for us. It's like great support for the arts, but it's they basically had this scheme for first time feature film directors and writers, that it was like a micro budget scheme, that you basically had to make a film for 400,000 euro. And so that was kind of the stipulation from the very beginning. We knew that it was going to have to be something that we made for very little. So I had this idea about like Irish folklore and the kind of traumas within a family, and it felt like it was quite contained in a house. It didn't have a massive cast. It could be done quite low key. So we put it forward for this idea, this kind of micro budget scheme, and we were very lucky that we got through to that, the like basically final stages of that. And then the Screen Ireland helped us kind of develop the script with a script editor, and but it was a really streamlined process. So it was really quick. So we've got that scheme kind of at the start of 2019, and we were shooting like a year and a half later, basically. Wow. So it was like really kind of it was like a really fast process to write the script and get everything together. And obviously then COVID was a part of that as well, which was kind of a painful thing to take on board too. But so it was hard. Like it was like definitely low budget, but it was you know, as a kind of emerging filmmaker, to have a protected film where they're like, here's money, go make the film. We don't need you to we're not going to kind of give you loads of notes. Just go and do it. It's micro budget, do your thing. And there's not a lot of pressure on you. And it's kind of a very fast process. You're not stuck in development for like 5 years or whatever. I was like, amazing. So it was just like, it was great to kind of just be able to like go out, like hit the ground running in that way. So it was a great kind of process.
Yeah, and I mean, that does sound really ideal, and I think it shows in the film because, and I think I said something in my review about it, and I know other reviews have commented on it, that it is a very, it's a encompassing vision. You know, you can tell that this is not a lot of cooks in the kitchen, you know, like this is your vision, and it is very cohesive, and it is kind of contained and small, like you said, not a huge cast. but I think that's probably the key is what you're describing is there wasn't a ton of producers or a big studio, like you say, giving you notes on every little thing. They kind of let you just here go make this film, and I think it shows in the finished product, and I think that's awesome. With this being your debut feature length film, I mean, that's so awesome.
Yeah, it's great, and thank you so much for saying that. It's really nice. But I think like you know, it's kind of wild, like even to be talking to you today, like it's you know, when we started out, we, you know, I saw it as just like a way to get to make a feature and to make something that I felt like was a story like that I had written and I could direct it and I could, yeah, kind of have a singular vision about it. But because it was so low budget and like we were shooting in COVID and like, you know, it was my first feature. It was a lot of the kind of, some of the crew had never worked on a feature film before as well. Like the HODs were upskilling some of them as well. So we were all kind of like just doing our best figuring it out. But it's kind of crazy to me to see it now travel so widely, you know, that to be kind of, we got a kind of small theatrical in the US and we like it's now on VOD and everything, and it's just like it's kind of wild to me. You know what I mean? Because it's like it felt like kind of such a small family thing when we were doing it, and now it's kind of out there in the world for everybody. It's kind of crazy, but yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about finding your two leads, Carolyn and Hazel? I mean, obviously very important to have the right leads portraying these roles. I mean, all the roles are important. Like you said, not a huge cast, so they're all very important. But the two of them are really great in the film. Can you talk a little bit about finding them and why they were perfect for these roles?
Yeah, well, I'd seen Hazel in a couple of things before, so I she, you know, she had been in a good few kind of Irish productions, so I knew her and I knew she was really great, and she was kind of the perfect. She just kind of tick so many boxes for me, and in terms of the character, and I think the way she could do a performance that felt very understated and quiet and internal, and I felt like we really needed that for the character. So I kind of knew she would be able to pull that off in a really great way. So we just offered the role of Shar to Hazel just off the bat. Like we didn't really audition very like people for it at all. So that was just a no-brainer. But then she was the first person we cast. We were meant to meet so we could kind of talk about the script and get, you know, kind of talk about our offer to her as for the role. And we were meant to meet on the 16th of March 2020. And we ended up having to cancel our meeting and do it on Zoom because basically the government was like shutting down everything. So we were like, maybe we should meet not in person. So that was the first time we met, and we shot the film in November that year. So you know, she was involved a few months before, so it was really nice because she was really into the subject matter. She's really into kind of paganism and witchcraft and all that kind of stuff. So she was she loved all the ideas in the script, and she you know, I would send her books about kind of paganism and she was reading them in prep, so that was really fun. But then Carolyn was kind of a much later to join the production. I think we cast Carolyn maybe in like September of that year, but I had been sent a lot of self-tapes of people because it was COVID, so you couldn't really do like in-person auditions, which was a shame. But she just sent a self-tape that was really affecting, and I feel like she really stood out amongst everyone of the self-tapes I'd seen. She really got it. So we got her to do a chemistry test with Hazel, and it was kind of just very clear that they naturally had a chemistry and that, you know, Hazel felt that too. So yeah, it was kind of, and as well, I think Carolyn's physicality is really important for this role, because there's a lot of physicality to it. No spoilers, but you kind of have to use your body and use it in different ways to show different characters, because she kind of almost plays two people in some parts of the movie, and she just did that so, you know, seamlessly. She could kind of shift her body in a way that she would feel completely different if she moved it. So that was a big part of kind of casting Harlan as well. And then she's just like a lovely person, just like such a sweetheart, and just like so helpful to Hazel as well, I think, because Hazel had a lot of emotional work to do in the film. So I think having Carolyn there to kind of be her buddy throughout, to kind of help her with this, because they were in a lot of scenes together, that was really great for Hazel to have as well, because they just got along so well, and they were just kind of had such a natural kind of connection. But we got really lucky. I mean, it was just like such a lovely team of people. Like all the actors were just so great personalities. Like there wasn't kind of anybody who wasn't kind of rowing in to do their bit, and like it was just everyone was giving it everything. So that we were just so grateful for all of them. Yeah, they're great.
And you said with everything moving so fast, kind of from inception right into shooting, and really getting it released pretty quick after that too. I guess how long was the shoot itself?
The shoot was, we actually, so funnily enough, we started shooting on the 2nd of November in 2020. So our plan was always to like shoot some B-roll on actual Halloween, to like have shots of like Irish Halloween, but the government put like a stay-at-home order the week before, so we like nobody was out on Halloween night, so we like went out with a small camera, but it was just like nothing. There was a few fireworks.
It was the 1 year where
yeah I know, it was so annoying.
Man.
Yeah, but so yeah, we started the November 2nd, and I think it was about 22 days overall, so it was pretty short. And like, yeah, as you know, we just didn't have the budget to kind of be shooting any longer than that, so it was like pretty stretched as it was. So but yeah, it was short, but it was, you know, we were prepared, so it kind of felt like we were ready, and we had the time we needed, so that was good.
And it does kind of sound like the momentum of it all was kind of to your advantage too, like moving that fast. Like you said, things do get caught in development hell sometimes, you know, bigger projects. And so do you think that was part of the case too, that it just helped, that it was just everything's rolling and not a whole lot of time to second guess anyway, so let's just go and be confident with it, and this is what we got?
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, I kind of suffered, I think, before that from a feeling that like, oh, if something's not perfect, you can't do it because it has to be perfect, or this has to be exactly like this. And I think You Are Not My Mother was great because it was moving so fast. We didn't have a lot of money, so, you know, off the bat it was like, no, you can't have a steady cam, we can't afford tracks, we can't afford this, we can't afford that. And so like it kind of makes you just like make all these creative compromises. So then you're just shooting it in a very kind of honest, authentic way. We're just like, nope, no gimmicks. This is kind of just like, we're shooting it this way, and that's how it's going to be. And I think once you kind of let go of like, this isn't going to be perfect, it's not going to be the perfect vision you had in your mind of what this scene might look like or what this might look like, but it kind of becomes its own film on its own. Do you know what I mean? So you kind of, as a director, I think you just kind of have to watch that happening and try and manage it to be like, okay, it's this now, but it's still, you know, I can still make this kind of something that I think will resonate with audiences and they'll enjoy it. So it's like, yeah, you kind of, it's a blessing and a curse, the kind of like fast-paced, low-budget style, because it does, you know, I now have a feature film that's done, and it was really quickly turned around, and that's great, and I feel so happy about it now. But I think beforehand I was definitely kind of terrified, because I was like, it's not going to be exactly what I imagined. Yeah.
And you said that Halloween was always a part of it, and you always were incorporating the folklore and the myth of the changeling. But there's also some you know, relatable and timely issues. You know, I mean, it talks about motherhood and mental illness, and it, you know, it doesn't hit you over the head with any of that, but it's, you know, it's there obviously, and it's balanced really well, I feel like. Can you talk a little bit about that, about having that kind of balance of you know, some real world relatable stuff and you know, with this other changeling stuff as well, and how that kind of crosses and keeping the balance there?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, for me it was always about kind of you know, the kind of mental health side of the film was always about being a young person coming of age, and if you see a parent who is struggling with their mental health, that can be very frightening, because they're behaving in a way which is probably different than you've ever seen them. They are kind of, you don't sometimes feel safe around them, and all these kind of feelings that come from that. So that was very much the essence of what we wanted. And even all the kind of genre scenes, which are scary, they're all very much based on kind of an ambiguity of like, is this supernatural, or is it just kind of a side effect of what she's going through now? So we always tried to kind of play with that idea, and the Changeling myth felt like a really, a great way to play as a metaphor of that kind of like somebody who's bipolar, or somebody who's kind of not there, that you like, they're changed from how you know them, or they're different than how you remember them. And seeing a parent, I think, behave in a way where they're just like not themselves is really scary, because you kind of rely on them to kind of be there for you. So it just felt, it definitely, I feel like all the genre elements were just a way to complement that and depict that. It just felt like it worked really well together. Yeah.
And what would you say was the most challenging part of making the film?
I don't know. I mean, like, because it was so low budget, like the bonfire. So in Ireland, obviously, we have these big, like every estate in Dublin will have, in the city where I'm from, every housing estate, most housing estates have houses and then a green in the middle, like a lot of the time. And most housing estates will have, one or two bonfires happening. And that's like all over the city. So the bonfire was always a big part of it. And also this idea that fire kind of banishes a changeling. So it was a big part of the kind of supernatural story as well. So it just felt like it had to end on that. But obviously we had no money. So the creative compromises in terms of like, no, you can't have a steady cam, you can't have a drone, you can't have this, was because we had to like basically kind of like set a person on fire. Like a spoiler alert, but we had to kind of like, have this big fire, which, doing all that kind of stuff, like real fire, setting a real bonfire. And we had to have it kind of like a tank going into it. And the bonfire was specially made with like these tubes. So like fire would come out of certain parts of it. So you could turn it on and off, and the wood was treated so it wouldn't catch fire as well, because that's like obviously a hazard. So there's all that kind of stuff, like that scene, that kind of sequence at the end was probably the most challenging, because it just had, there was just so many parts to it. And also it was a very emotional performance for Hazel, and it was moving really fast paced. So it was like, balancing, like doing this kind of very emotional moments where she's kind of faced with her mother at the end, but then also these kind of like stunts and kind of like, fire and stuff like. So it was kind of like a sequence that has everything in it. So it kind of trying to balance your director hat of all the things was kind of quite challenging. But another day it was like the Halloween scene where the mom's like walking through the streets on Halloween. That was actually, I thought that was going to be like a nightmare, because basically like COVID was just like nobody was on the streets. We couldn't get too many extras, like all this, and we couldn't like pay extras that much because we didn't have any money. So it was like, we can pay like 10 extras. And I was like, can't just have 10 trick-or-treaters, like that's insane. Because on Halloween in Ireland, like there's trick-or-treaters, like if you go into a housing estate, it's like kids everywhere. And I was like, oh, this isn't gonna work. And so then the second AD, he's like a hero. He went to the estate where we were going to film, and he dropped in leaflets to all the houses. And he was basically like, we're filming here this day next week, just to let you know, there's going to be big lights, all this kind of stuff. But if you have kids, it's a Halloween night scene. And like, this was like a couple of weeks after the Halloween that had been cancelled. So he was like, so if your kids missed not having a Halloween, they can come out on the street in costume and be in a movie. So like had this in the note. And then we got there to shoot that evening, and it was like 150 kids. It had like spread like wildfire like around the whole estate, and like they were all like decked out in like their best Halloween costumes. Like it was so cool. So it was just like, we got like basically like 100 free extras because just like all these kids were so excited to be there. So that was like, I thought that was going to be really like a tough scene to do, but that was like kind of a happy story of the film, which was good.
Oh, that's awesome. And that
Yeah.
is a happy story because you gave those kids a Halloween on the year when Halloween was canceled for them. So that's so awesome.
Yeah, it was so cool.
And filmed it, immortalized it on film as well.
Yeah. No, yeah, that was very cool. I like that. That was a good day.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that was a great day. Well, and that was going to be my next question. What has been the most rewarding part of this? I guess this whole experience for you, and you can include since the film's release. What's been the most rewarding part for you?
I think just, you know, I think because the team that made it were all, you know, some of them hadn't really made a lot of, you know, hadn't worked on a feature before. They, you know, maybe it was like just one feature before, and, you know, a lot of young crew coming up as well. And I think one of the most rewarding things is actually just seeing their work get lauded, like, you know, and, you know, because we have kind of, they're like Irish Film Academy Award type things here, and the film got nominated for 6, which was kind of crazy for a horror movie. But like the DOP Narian, he got nominated, and D Hexon, who did the music, got nominated. And I think just like see them get the kudos they deserve, because like they worked on the film so much and so hard, and like, you know, they weren't paid very much money to work on it, and like they gave so much of their time and energy and passion to it. And I think that's the only way the film kind of worked out the way it did, because we had so many great people working on it who just were like so committed. So I think just like seeing them get kind of like, you know, to the next level of their career because of it as well, I think that's been like a really nice thing to see. Yeah.
And another thing that I do love about the film, I mean, the Halloween aspects and all that, but it does, like you said, it's got the balance of the folklore and the mental issues, but there's a very primal fear to it all too, of, you know, seeing a loved one go through changes, you know, and however you want to define that, but and kind of being helpless or feeling helpless and not knowing what to do. And I think that is one of those real primal fears that you know, every culture and everybody can kind of relate to in a way. What was that a conscious thing too for you, or did that just kind of come into play from all of this as a byproduct?
Yeah, no, it definitely, I think whenever I'm working on an idea, it always is going to come from a very deep fears. I think like ideas that I have are often like based on kind of like real primal fears that I have myself. Do you know what I mean? So I think if it scares me, like it's probably going to scare somebody else. So so it was always coming from that place. But yeah, I think as you said, it's kind of amazing to see how universal it can be, because obviously, like, you know, I didn't think about it that much before, but I think, you know, almost everybody everybody has a mother somewhere. Even if you're not like, you know, you don't know them, or you're not close to them, or they're not in your life anymore, you have somebody who gave birth to you, and that relationship is so important, and it can be bad and it can be good, but it's like a big part of your life, no matter what, like no matter kind of what you think. So that's always like in your DNA, you're always connected to that person in some way. So it's like that. I think I hadn't really thought about it a lot when I was writing the film, but I think as the film has come out, just seeing kind of how a lot of different people, how the film resonates with different people in different ways, depending on kind of their experience in life. And it's like, that's really interesting. And it's kind of amazing to see how that kind of, as you say, primal fear kind of connects with so many people, which is cool.
Absolutely. I think it definitely does. And I also love that not only is this a great Halloween time movie, but it's kind of a great Mother's Day movie if you're a horror fan. It works for both in a lot of ways. I think we might in our house might pull it out for both.
Love it. And St. Patrick's Day, you can do an Irish.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It definitely fits that as well. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, any time of year.
Perfect.
Well, I love it, and if people haven't seen it yet, like you said, it's out on VOD right now, and they should definitely check it out. We highly recommend it. And
Thank you.
so what's next for you? Do you have an idea what your next project's going to be, or what you're hoping to be working on in the future?
Yeah, I think I've got a couple of projects that I've been writing, so I'm just seeing where they might end up or when that might happen. So it's they're obviously, I think it's always going to be a horror movie next again, but probably something a little bit different than You're Not My Mother. So yeah, I think I'm excited for what's to come, but I'm not sure just yet, but it'll definitely be horror space. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I can't wait, and I look forward to talking to you about it, whatever it's going to be in the future.
Cool.
Because again, you can call me a fan, and we'll be watching and looking for that next horror film for sure. This has just been a pleasure talking to you today, and getting to know more about you, and hearing about Halloween in Ireland. I love it. It makes me want to go spend an October there sometime for sure.
Definitely, yeah, you have to. That'd be cool. See where it all began. You can go to all the like pagan sites or something.
Yes, yes, we are gonna have to sometime for sure.
Yeah,
that's gonna be like a bucket list trip for sure.
Awesome, that's so cool. Well, thank you for having me. It's so nice to hear you say all that, and it's been a pleasure. As I forgot to show you, actually, I have a Halloween tattoo.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
that
it's like little
awesome.
jack-o'-lantern. Yeah.
Yes.
I was just admiring your pumpkins in the background. I was like, I have to show them.
Yes, I'm so glad you did. Thank you. Yes, you were definitely one of us.
Yes,
you were
absolutely.
one of us, totally. Yes,
For
yes.
sure.
If you've got a jack-o'-lantern tattoo, that is Halloween every day. That is the definition of Halloween daily. So
literally, yeah.
You're literally one of us for sure. I love it. Thank you
awesome.
for showing us that. That is totally awesome.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. It was really nice to talk to you today.
Oh, this has been a blast. And I always hate to say goodbye, so instead I'll just be the first to wish you a happy Halloween 2022.
Awesome. Happy Halloween. I love it. Cool.